When you see when the missile attack multi-storied building, when there is a 3-month-old child, when you see how many young men died, it's terrible. Only anger, only disappointment. It is a terrible situation when two nations, two friends, two partners became real enemies, and people start to have anger between each other.
Hello and welcome. This week on The Edge, we'll be talking about one of my favorite cities in Ukraine and indeed all the world, Odessa. Situated on the Black Sea coast, it is beautiful, steeped in history and culture. It is also one of the globe's major port cities, essential to Ukraine's financial future. Perhaps that's just one reason why Moscow covets it so. Now, at the beginning of the war, there was some concern about where the loyalty of the mostly Russian-speaking population of Odessa would lie. No more. As somebody who has traveled there many times recently, I can tell you that Odessites or Odessans, who are admittedly known to be quite stubborn and fiercely independent, well, that question of loyalty, that's gone. That's out of the window. They are decidedly Ukrainian. That'll happen when Russia repeatedly attacks your beloved city, your Odessa mama, destroying entire apartment buildings and historic sites, killing your neighbors, your friends, and your family. We speak with Deputy Mayor Pavel Vugelman, who has just concluded his participation in a economic forum in the city, attended by dignitaries and authorities from the four corners of the earth, because they are looking at the future for the city. There's one more aspect to who these people are, these Odessites, and they are a people filled with positivity and with hope. I hope you'll find this enjoyable and informative. Mr. Deputy Mayor, Pavel, if you don't mind terribly. I am unabashedly a lover of Odessa, so I appreciate you coming and speaking to us today. For my audience, they may know the name Odessa. They may even know that it's a city in Ukraine, but they may not know the spirit of Odessa. For my audience, would you tell me, what is this city called Odessa? What is this Odessa mama of which they speak?
So we say that Odessa is an economical and cultural center of Ukraine. It is a huge seaport. We have in Odessa, we have 5 T's. It's transport, tourism, technology, trade, and trust. And for many, many years, for more than 230 years, Odessans create their city. It was multicultural, multinational city. At the moment, we have more than 132 nationalities living in peace and prosperity, where all the nationalities can visit synagogue, church, or Muslim places where all the religion are. You can hear different dialects of different languages. And that's why Odessa is a multicultural, multinational city with a huge port. And during the whole history of Odessa, Europeans create the architectural monuments of our city, its buildings of our city, create poems, create stories, print books, and that's why for the last 10 years, first of all, we get the status of the city, UNESCO City of Literature, and previous year we got a status of city in a UNESCO heritage list. So we're now as a part of UNESCO. But unfortunately, at the moment, that we have a constant systematic attacks, and but nevertheless, we continue to function despite all the constant threats, and the Odessa community has adapted to the new condition. And shops.
Before we move on to talking about the war and the current situation there, I have one more general question that I would like you to express for my audience. What is an Odessite? What is the nature of a person who lives there? What kind of a person is an Odessite?
Thank you for this question. It is a very good person. Odessites, they're very kind, they're very friendly. And their philosophy is, and the kind of life, it is fundament of it, it's friendship. And everybody is talking that friendship for Odessites is the greatest values ever known by humanity. And when you have friends all over the world who support you, with whom you're in touch, you feel yourself more sure in everything you do. And that's why Odessite is and Odessa, it's a unique center of the world where you can find roots in all part of the world, and in all part of the world you can find friends of Odessites.
I grew up partly in a port city myself. I grew up in San Francisco. And so I understand this aspect of the entire world, because you are a port city, coming to you and having to adapt to multiculturalism, multi-ethnicities, different religions. And I really do truly see that spirit in Odessa as well. Now, when we come to the war, how are the people of your city bearing up under the strain of what Russia is doing to Odessa?
We can say that unfortunately we has adapted to the new conditions. After coronavirus, we became some stronger. We were united, and now when this aggression starts again, we adopted to these new conditions, and at the moment we revive, let's say, our business start working, schools, shops are open at the moment, but all these attacks, everyday attacks, they mark on the lives of the people. And also, all time long, we have blackouts, we have lack of electricity, but we adopted, we have generators, we have sun panels on the roofs. For example, during the daytime, when there is no electricity, you can hear a loud sound of generators working everywhere, and it is really it is the sound of war. And despite all that, we still, like we say, we never cry. It's a famous song in Odessa. We never cry. We have another interests. It's the translation sound like that, but the idea is that we always think about that everything will be okay. We believe in our military forces of Ukraine. We believe in God. We believe that we will, together with the support of the whole world, we will survive and will win in such a war.
And nothing will ever shut down Prevost.
Yes. Yes, Prevost, it's a famous.
I have many friends there, and they're wonderful people. And one of them told me that one of the way that they resist the aggression of the Russians, and you'll forgive me for the rather improper language, but I think it was too appropriate not to include. She said that we here in Odessa, we have adopted a payopnaya mentalitet, which is kind of like, screw it. We're not going to let the Russians destroy what we live in, such a beautiful place with the sun and the sea and the beauty of the city and the pearl of Odessa with the opera house and Prevost, the market I just mentioned, and the Deripaska Street, the walking center, and the historic nature of Odessa. It seems to me that just simply by living your life and not letting the Russians take away from the pleasures that Odessa Mama provides, that in and of itself is a defense. And that's great. And I want you to talk about that. But I also want you to talk about what real defensive needs you have, like air defense in particular.
I'm not sure that I understand the last word you mentioned because there is some noise. There was, but sure. I'll try.
I want to talk about the spirit of the Odessite people, of the people there to not give up and to enjoy all that Odessa provides them. Yes. But I also need to talk about real defenses as well. So we could transition from a happier topic to perhaps a more realistic one.
Yeah. Okay, about the spirit. Several days ago, when you mentioned our ambassador in Africa, Ms. Elizaveta, we have a huge...
A mutual friend.
Yes. We have a huge forum in Odessa. The name of the forum is Odessa Economic Revival Forum. Can you imagine that during the alarms, during attacks, we have a representative of more than 23 countries in Odessa on this forum. Among them, the ambassador of Japan, the ambassador of Italy, the ambassador of Litva, the biggest businessman of Ukraine, the top Forbes, for example, in Ukrainian Forbes, the representative of biggest investment companies. And during this forum, the mayor of Istanbul, the mayor of Venice, so the mayors of biggest Ukrainian cities, they were all present in Odessa on this economic revival forum. And during the forum, we heard that we have a huge support from the world, that no one will let us lose in this war. And everybody will help us to revive our economy, to restore our buildings. And when you have such big amount of friends and partners, you really start to believe that everything will be okay. And it is our spirit, it is our soul, and because we believe only in good things that will happen with Ukraine and with Odessa. And at the moment, Odessa is the sea gates of Ukraine, it's the biggest port of Ukraine. And at the moment, we understand that during this war, all the world understands that we feed the world, let's say. At the moment, we have we opened last year, we opened a grain corridor. And at the moment, we have more than 600 ships who brings more than 200 million tons of cargo from Odessa port with grain, with agricultural goods to more than 24 countries worldwide. And that's why we also is an economic center for the world, for Europe, and for Ukraine, of course. And we export Ukrainian goods, and it is very important that we have to continue this no matter we will have a permission from Russia and no, because our partners help us to defend the ships and to continue working and to develop our partnership and to develop our economy.
Yeah, it's very weird to be down in Odessa and look out into the harbor in the Black Sea and not see, as in better times, the entire, to the horizon, you would see ships. And now it's very isolated, which is, upsetting. But for Ukraine, Odessa, as you have pointed out, is essential for trade, for tourism, for a connection to the wider world. And this is what Russia would like to take away. In some parts of Russia, they still believe that it is possible for them to seize and control Odessa. I have been to Odessa. It is my opinion that the Russians will never, ever take Odessa again. Odessa will never. Odessites are lovely people. You're right to point out how lovely they are. But there's another side to Odessites, and I hope I don't offend you. They can be very stubborn. They're very individualistic, and they love their city. I don't think that the Russians will ever take control of Odessa again. Not many Russians watch my channel, I suspect. But if you were to have a chance to tell these Russians, like Solovyev or some of the other people who believe that eventually Odessa will be theirs again.
Мы Одессу, конечно, не сохраним, простите. Мы ее потом заново отстроим. Так будет гораздо проще. Ну, что делать? Ну, по крайней мере, портовую зону. Я помню, что драмтеатр надо... Оперный театр надо сохранить.
А все остальное?
What would your message be to them?
I will tell you a small story. The history of the city, maybe before 2014. Odessa have about more than 20 everyday flights to Moscow. Odessa, Moscow, 20 flights. Even Kiev have less flights. In 2014, when there was a first, when it was a problem with Crimea, when they get to Crimea and how to say it in English, take away Crimea, try to take away Crimea from the part of Ukraine, invade Crimea.
Yes.
And after that, all the Ukrainians understood that it's not our friends anymore. And at the moment, if you will ask Odessites, we had a lot of friends in Russia, in Moscow, but today everybody feel that it is not only friends, it's enemies. Our attitude to the army, to their people, it is totally another. We have a lot of narratives in Odessa concerning the names in Russian language, Russian poets.
And it is predominantly a Russian-speaking city.
Yes.
Or it has been.
Yes.
Yeah.
And at the moment, only aggression, only decolonization, derussification, and all this, it is now in the soul of Odessites. They broke with this armed aggression, they broke the soul of Odessites. And now people of different nationalities, Jewish, Polish, Bulgarians, and so on. They all are patriots of Ukraine, and they hate Russian soldier, and only hate, because when you see, it's hard to even to pronounce it all, because when you see when the missile attack multi-storied building, when there is a 3-month-old child, and when you help as a volunteer to save the people, when you see how many young men died, and it's terrible. It's terrible. Only anger, only disappointment, and it is a terrible situation when two nations, two friends, two partners became real enemies, and people start to have anger between each other. And this situation is for many years. And we wish that this, of course, that this war will end, and that something will happen in Russia with Putin, and that we will come back to normal life in Ukraine and in Odessa.
Yes. I mean, people, Odessa is a multicultural city with very strong ties to Russia. It's Catherine the Great is the founder, or respected as the founder of Odessa. And there were clashes in 2014, and famously there was the incident at the trade union with the fire there, in which many tragically died, and it was centered around this kind of pro-Kiev, pro-Moscow perspective. I don't know if you want to touch on that because it is so controversial, but regardless of what happened in there in 2014, now all I see are people overwhelmingly when I visit Odessa who are very angry at Russians. And I guess that kind of makes sense because Moscow is bombing you regularly and killing your people. And aside from the question of what happened at the trade union fire, and again, it's up to you to discuss it or not, I think it's a matter for the past, but the hit at the Church of the Transfiguration, to me, was a line that was crossed that cannot be uncrossed. I think that is such a beautiful building. And when it was hit roughly a year ago, to see the people of Odessa come out, the civilians, of every kind, come out to help clean up. Do you also see that as a turning point in Odessa's relationship and perception of Russia? Because that was a terrible attack. And it's so horrible what happened in the church. Do you see that as a turning point? And how is the church now? Is it rehabilitated, renovated?
You say it right that Russian forces systematically attack the city with missiles and drones, targeting residential areas, ports, critical infrastructure, and also we can never believe that they will attack the historical part of the city. And now it is many buildings are damaged, and you have to hear the numbers. More than 1 million square meters are damaged at the moment by Russian missiles and drones, and including the Transfiguration Cathedral and Vorontsov Palace in the Primorsky Boulevard. And it was the huge unity and of Odessans. They show courage and unity when they start to repair this cathedral by their own hands at the beginning. And at the moment, Italy, the representative of UNESCO, gather 500,000 euros for restoration. and the total amount is much bigger, and they promise to restore this building and also other buildings in the historical center part of the city. And at the moment,
That's wonderful.
the reparation work started, and the roof is already done, and soon inside the building, the reparation will start.
That's fantastic. And I hope when this is all over that you get many, many tourists returning to see that beautiful building along with the other beautiful aspects of your city. Speaking of that, however, we're talking about the economic situation and one of the T's that you mentioned is tourism. Obviously, you're not getting a lot of tourists right now. How is the city surviving financially? You've got the port working at a fraction of what it normally does. Tourists are not coming. How is the city surviving economically?
So many aspects of that. First of all, it's our port what starts working, and most economy is based on the seaport. The second thing is our businessmen, they start working on exports. The third thing that regional administration give us the permission to open the seashore and to so that we can open beaches for people from all over Ukraine who can rest or have rehabilitation in our sanatoriums. So all our hotels were working this year, especially. It was, let's say, a good season for rehabilitation of people who need such a rehabilitation during the war. As you understand, you have to psychologically to have some rest. Also, for example, from Kharkiv, it is under a huge attack now, and we attract 300 children from Kharkiv. We attract them in our sanatoriums, so they have a good time in Odessa, and we pay our municipal budget pay for this rehabilitation in Odessa. And what I can mention, if we are talking about business, no matter that there is all-time bombing, two chains of international hotels decided to continue construction of hotels in Odessa. So we are proud that investors who believe in our city continue to invest, continue to work. And it is, like you mentioned at the beginning, it is the soul of a city, that we are the city also of entrepreneurship, of businessmen. And no matter what, we continue to work hard for the sake of our economy. Because as we say also in Ukraine, in Odessa, if you want to support one soldier in the front line, 5 businessmen have to pay taxes and to work hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And there's one other thing about Odessa, aside from the economic aspect of it, the trade aspect of it, the international aspect of it, the tourism aspect of it. You are strategically also very important for Ukraine. And as someone who lives in Kiev and travels around the country as well, thank you so much for the guardians that you have on our shores of the Black Sea, who are our first line of defense against attacks from the sea, which the Russians like to do. They like to fire missiles at the rest of Ukraine from the Black Sea, and it is Odessa that is that first line of defense when it comes to attacks from the sea. Talk to me a little bit about how strategically important it is and the defense that you provide to Ukraine.
I'm not specialist.
No, but just in general. And certainly not any secrets or anything. Just in terms of what Odessa means in the fight against Russia, particularly when it comes from the sea, in general terms.
So it's a sea corridor. It's a sea corridor for many countries. Our connection with all the ports, huge ports, and that's why Odessa is very important for the whole economy of Ukraine. Because before war, we have three international routes from our seaport to European countries. And that's why, as an economical center, we have a huge ability for export of different goods. That's why it means it is the most important thing maybe for Ukraine, and all the delegations, all the ministers, diplomats, we all understand that Odessa is a strategical center and a multicultural center. Also, it is very popular to say in Odessa, when you bomb Odessa, it's the same like you bomb the whole world, the whole Europe, because the ships from 24 countries came to Odessa, and it allowed.
But allow me to tell you a little story about one time that I was in Odessa. And as you know, in Odessa, many of the street signs and things like that have been obscured so that if Russian soldiers were to enter the city, they would not be able to maneuver around. And I asked a waitress at a cafe, I said, a Russian soldier could easily just rip those signs off, the coverings off the signposts. And her answer to me was, yes, but then they'd have to get out of their armored vehicles and their tanks, and that's when we'd get them. And to me, this is the spirit of an Odessite. I pity any Russian soldier that would ever try to attempt to enter Odessa. What if it isn't going to happen? I am convinced of it, but that kind of fighting spirit, what do you think would happen if Odessa was threatened again by invasion from the Russian forces? How do you think Odessites would react to that in defending their city?
We saw it in February 2 years ago when every Odessite went to the streets and started to make bombs from their own hands, by their own hands, take weapon, construct special equipment to protect the city, start to create drones, and many other things. So at the moment we're let's say the courage of our people today is much higher than ever. One Odessite costs tens of Russian soldiers, and everyone, starting from ladies, going to our grandparents, they're ready to protect the city. We can make armor, weapons from anything, and we're ready to conquer them because the truth is on our side. That's why we do not believe on any invasion, because it's not their land. It's our city, it's Ukrainian city, and we will protect it till the end.
I see that all the time. And the thing is, I have said this for many months now, and even longer perhaps. Unless Vladimir Putin is able to change the government in Kiev and to take control of the city that Catherine the Great built. So they still think it is their city. They are still deluded that it is still their city. I think when that delusion disappears, that Vladimir Putin will be the Russian leader who will have lost Odessa forever. And that will be devastating for him. Can you ever see Odessa bending the knee or becoming a subject of the Kremlin ever again?
Concerning Ekaterina the Great, really there was a period of time in Odessa history when she signed a rescript on starting the port construction. And now she is in a history museum. This monument is in the history museum. The same.
I saw the monument. Yes, the monument came down. It is no longer. I rented an apartment right around the corner, and she is no longer on that pedestal. And I knew it drove the Russians crazy when you pulled it down.
Yeah. So the monument in the historical museum, because it is a small part of the history of our city. The name of this square, when this monument was situated, the name was also Ekaterinskaya Square. And now the name of this square is European Square. And the government of Italy and the Venice mayor promise us and gives us the project of construction of a huge fountain on this territory. And after the war, we will start the construction of a new huge fountain on this territory.
I will be extraordinarily happy to come and visit and see this beautiful fountain that will be built there.
Yes,
that's wonderful news. And it leads me to one of my final questions. When this war is over, because all wars eventually end, what kind of Odessa do you want to build? What is the Odessa of the future going to look like?
We're sure that Odessa is a European city, multicultural, multinational, which has connections by our new airport with many countries, where we live in peace, where we have partners and friends worldwide, where we continue our work in our international cooperation with our ambassadors, with our friends. And we are sure that the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, we will rebuild them, we will reconstruct all the buildings in the central part of the city. At the moment, we have 70 kilometers of beach lines with restaurants, with nightclubs. So we're open to the world. We will be very
Arcadi is one of my favorite places.
Yes. We'll be very glad to see tourists from all over the world. And we are very kind, and we will be very friendly for everyone who will come to Odessa from Ukrainian cities, from the worldwide. We're ready to rebuild our city, our economy very quickly. And with the help of our friends.
Yes, and I was just going to ask that as another one of my final questions, is what do you need? What you have an opportunity to speak to my audience. It's not the largest in the world, but I'll give you the opportunity here to say to an international audience, what do you need right now?
Thank you, Phil. So at the moment, the biggest problems for the city, it's a lack of electricity and power generation in the center of the city. Because Russian understands and they attacks electricity and generation production in the city and in the Odessa region. That's why all time long we have a lack of electricity, of heating, and of water supply. And that's why we're working on attracting money for solar panels, for turbines who can produce a huge amount of electricity. And we got some support from our partners from Japan, from UNDP, but it's not enough.
So this is on an industrial level. You need assistance for
Yes.
primarily electricity. What
Yes,
can
it is emergency projects because we are going into the winter, and it is the most terrible thing when previous winter we have 2 total blackouts. You can't even imagine what it is when you have no heating at house, no electricity, no mobile phone, no connection with satellites, nothing. Total blackout for more than 24 hours one time, and for about 40 hours a second time. It's you can't even imagine how terrible it is when multi-storied region of multi-storied buildings are without electricity and without heating. The time goes, if it will, for example, if it was a situation when it is minus 20 degrees outside and there is no heating and electricity in the house, you have to evacuate all the people, and you will not reopen this building until the end of winter. That's why you have to evacuate hundreds of thousands of people from the region. That's why this year we're more prepared for such a situation. Our government protect our heating and power factories more than previous winter, but still they continue to attack generation factories, electricity generation factories, and that's why we need a solution. We need financing of such a models. It's like a containers who can produce electricity from gas, for example, and it will help us to survive in the winter time.
Well, I know the people of Odessa are strong and they will survive no matter what, but thank you for expressing what you need. That is on an industrial level. Is there something that the average individual who may be watching this in America or Britain or Australia or wherever our audience reaches, what can the individual do to help your lovely city?
At the moment, for example, I can talk about one of the projects concerning children. So you can understand that usually Odessa it is situated on a seashore, and usually from all over Ukraine, children for rehabilitation for the summertime came for rest to Crimea or to Odessa because of the beautiful seaside, beaches, attractions, and so on. At the moment, we have only Odessa, where children from all over Ukraine can have rehabilitation. And before 2 years ago, we have 3 rehabilitation centers for children. And 2 of them were totally destroyed by the missiles. My colleague, Deputy Mayor Sergei Tituhin, he was in one of these. It was a missile attack on this institution, and he came in 20 minutes after the missile attack, and there was one more missile attack, and he died in this terrible attack. And at the moment, we want to restore one of such institutions for children, for rehabilitation of children from all over the Ukraine. The name of this institution is Lastivka. And many children who have suffered from attacks, who had, for example, no leg, no hand, or some other terrible diseases, or who had some psychological problems. We want to restore this institution Lastivka for rehabilitation of Odessa children, and rehabilitation of children from Ukraine. And we are gathering financing grants for such a project.
We will include a link to that project if you'll be so kind as to send it to me. I will include that in the description of this
Thank
episode.
you so much. Thank you so much. We have a video presentation and in English even. We will send for you. Thank you so much. And thank
It
for
would
your
be my
audience.
honor. Well, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Odessa gives so much to Ukraine. It is a symbol of resistance. It is a reminder that there is a beautiful future ahead for Ukraine, because someday Odessa Mama will be shining in all her glory again. I have no doubt. And before I let you go, I will also tell you that for me personally, Odessa has lifted my spirits every time I am there. But even when I'm not there, for example, at the beginning of the war, there was a very famous video from what I believe to be the local naval brass band, because of course there's also a naval base in Odessa. And they were standing in front, and I'm sure, Mr. Deputy Mayor, you remember this. They were in front of sandbags, in front of the beautiful, beautiful Opera House, which is another reason to visit Odessa altogether. And they played a rendition of Bobby McFerrin's Don't Worry, Be Happy. And that was while bombs were dropping on Ukraine. And in that very moment, I knew that Ukraine couldn't be beaten, and that the resistance would continue, and that there would be a bright future with a Ukraine that includes Odessa. So thank you, thank your citizens, and thank your city for reminding us and providing us with something that's so important during war, hope. And I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Phil. We believe in it. Thank you for you and for your audience. Thank you so much. From all of me.
Slava Odessa Mama. All right. Thank you.